Let's go Dolphins! What I'm about to reveal might not make sense at first, but if it actually happens, it could be the play that changes everything for the Miami Dolphins going forward. There's a strategy being discussed that could shock a lot of people, and believe me, in the end, you'll either love it or seriously question it. But before we dive into that, like the video if you're with the Dolphins, no matter what happens, and leave this comment right now. I trust the process in the end. Now let's get straight into it. According to the latest internal discussions reflected in this mock draft scenario, the Dolphins are seriously exploring a direction that shifts attention to one of the weakest units on the roster, the secondary. And the biggest shock? With the 11th overall pick, Miami is projected to select safety Dylan Tien out of Oregon, a name that hasn't been heavily discussed among fans. At first glance, this feels like a reach. Many fans were hoping for a more high-profile name or a premium position like edge rusher or wide receiver. But when you look closer, the reasoning starts to make sense. Tien brings elite athleticism. We're talking about a 41-inch vertical, blazing speed, and a strong physical presence at around 200 pounds. He's not just a deep safety either. He can step into the box, defend tight ends, and contribute against the run. That versatility is something Miami desperately needs. And here's the key detail. The Dolphins' safety room has been described as arguably the weakest unit on the entire roster. That's not a small issue, that's a structural problem. So while it may not be the flashy pick fans want, it could be the smart one. But things don't stop there. This is where the situation turns explosive. There's a blockbuster trade scenario gaining traction, one involving linebacker Jordan Brooks. The idea? Miami packages Brooks along with the 30th overall pick to move up to pick number 20 in the first round. That effectively values Brooks as an early third-round asset, and if the Dallas Cowboys are looking to reinforce their defense, this kind of deal could actually make sense for both sides. Now think about that for a second. You're giving up a key defensive player, but in return, you gain a higher first-round position. That's a risky move, but also one that signals aggression, something this front office hasn't always shown. And if that trade goes through, Miami doubles down on the secondary again. At pick 20, the projection is cornerback Jermad McCoy from Tennessee, a player with elite upside but also a major question mark after missing the 2025 season due to an ACL injury. When healthy, his 2024 tape was outstanding, showing lockdown potential and playmaking ability. But the injury risk is real, and that's exactly why he might still be available in that range. So let's pause and look at the bigger picture here. In one single draft sequence, the Dolphins could completely rebuild their secondary, turning a major weakness into a potential strength almost overnight. A dynamic safety at 11, a high upside corner at 20, that's a massive shift in defensive identity. But at what cost? You're passing on other premium positions early. You're potentially trading away Jordan Brooks, and you're betting on a player coming off a serious injury. This is the kind of strategy that either looks genius in hindsight or becomes a decision fans question for years. Because if this front office pulls the trigger on a move like that, there's no turning back. You're committing to a completely new identity on defense, and more importantly, you're trusting that this young secondary can develop fast enough to compete right now. And that's where things get even more interesting. Because after reshaping the secondary with Dylan Tien and Jermad McCoy, the Dolphins don't just sit back and relax. They immediately shift focus to protecting the offense, and this is something fans have been begging for. At pick 43, the projection brings in Emmanuel Pregnan, an interior offensive lineman from Oregon who has been nothing short of dominant. We're talking about a player who didn't allow a single sack last season, showed elite consistency, and brings both size and athleticism to the trenches. Now imagine this scenario. You're adding real competition to the offensive line. Pregnan joins a group where battles for starting spots become intense. And that's exactly what Miami needs, not just talent, but internal competition that raises the level of the entire unit. This isn't just about depth, this is about building a stronger foundation to protect the quarterback and improve the run game. But the front office doesn't stop there, and this is where fans who love offensive weapons are finally going to feel heard. In the third round, Miami targets wide receiver Ted Hurst, a name that keeps popping up more and more in internal conversations. This is a player who dominated at the Senior Bowl, showed incredible smoothness for his size, and fits exactly what the Dolphins look for in a mid-round receiver. There's real belief that if he's on the board, Miami won't pass on him. And here's the thing, this isn't just a random pick. This is a calculated move. If the Dolphins don't take a receiver early, they're positioning themselves to still walk away with a high upside weapon. Hurst could end up being one of those steals that fans look back on and say, how did he fall that far? Now let's shift back to the trenches again, because Miami continues to invest there. Marquise Bell, a massive offensive tackle out of Miami, comes into play as a developmental piece. At 6 feet 9 inches, over 350 pounds, he's a long-term project, not someone expected to start immediately, but someone who could become a key starter in the future. And that's the strategy here. Build now, but also prepare for what's coming next, especially with contracts expiring soon. Defensively, another name that keeps showing up is Jan Barr, an edge linebacker from Michigan. And this is one of those gritty, physical players that every defense needs. Miami already has pass rush specialists, but what they lack is someone who can set the edge and stop the run consistently. Barr brings that toughness. He's not flashy, but he fills a gap that's been quietly hurting this defense. And then there's a very intriguing addition at tight end, Justin Jolly from NC State. He's not a complete tight end, let's be clear. Blocking isn't his strength, but as a receiving threat, that's where he shines. 7 touchdowns last season in a struggling offense tells you everything. He could become a valuable red zone weapon, something Miami has been missing in key moments. As the draft goes deeper, the Dolphins continue to take calculated risks. Bryce Botcher at linebacker brings effort and production, even if his athletic ceiling isn't elite. He's the kind of player coaches love, reliable, hardworking, and ready to contribute. There are also late-round flyers like Hezekiah Masses, Kobe Young, and quarterback Sawyer Robertson, players who may not be guaranteed hits, but represent low-risk, potential reward picks. And that's what Day 3 is all about. Now step back and look at this entire strategy. This isn't a safe draft. This isn't conservative. This is aggressive, calculated, and full of risks. You're betting on a secondary rebuild. You're trusting young offensive linemen to step up. You're adding weapons without using premium picks. And you're potentially letting go of a key defensive leader in Jordan Brooks. If it works, this could be the turning point that finally pushes Miami closer to a Super Bowl run. If it fails, there will be a lot of tough questions inside that building. And here's the part that nobody is talking about enough. This draft strategy doesn't just impact 2026. It could redefine the next 3 to 5 years of the Miami Dolphins franchise. Because when you look deeper, this isn't just about adding players. It's about changing priorities. For years, Miami has been seen as a team that leans heavily on offensive firepower, speed, and explosive plays. But this mock scenario shows something very different, a shift toward balance, toughness, and long-term roster structure. And that's a huge philosophical change. Think about it. If the Dolphins really go safety at 11, trade up for a corner at 20, and continue stacking the trenches, what message does that send? It says, we're done being one-dimensional. And that's where things get real. Because one of the biggest criticisms of Miami in recent seasons has been exactly that. When the offense struggles, there isn't enough support from the defense or the offensive line to carry the team through tough games. And against elite teams in the playoffs, that weakness gets exposed every single time. So what we're seeing here is an attempt to fix that at its core. But let me be very clear with you, this approach requires patience. And not every fan is going to be willing to wait. Dylan Tien, for example, might not come in and instantly look like a superstar. Safeties often take time to adjust to the speed and complexity of the NFL. Jermad McCoy is coming off a serious injury. There's no guarantee he returns to full